Jim Isenberg and Frank Williams are joining us to talk about Grandpas United. We're going to learn the fascinating story about how this organization came into being and all the great work that they're doing, as well as some of the fun and, dare I say, mischief that they get into occasionally with their talent shows. So stay tuned for this really funny and interesting conversation. Hello and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. I am excited to be teaming up with Dee Dee Moore from More Than Grand to be able to offer the listeners and the members of the Cool Grandpa Podcast a 10% discount on any of the products that are available at More Than Grand. Now, More Than Grand is really focused in on supporting new grandparents and parents when they're starting to have grandchildren. So I want you to be sure to go over to morethangrand.com, check out what's going on there, and I've got a link for the discount code down in the show notes for this episode, as well as in the affiliate section of my website. So be sure to check those out. Now, before we get started with Jim and Frank, I definitely want to remind you that grandparents are important. And this is kind of like, hey, air is important. I get it. But what we're going to really hear is how grandparents and grandfathers in particular are definitely impacting their community. They're helping change lives. And it's not just the lives of their immediate family, but it's lives of the young men and women in the community around them. So I'm especially honored, and I love this organization, Grandpas United, and you're going to enjoy listening to Jim and Frank. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation. Hi, Jim. Hi, Frank. Thanks for being on the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm really going to enjoy having this conversation about Grandpas United.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely.
As we get started with this, what I'd love to do is have you guys do a little bit of an introduction, and then I want to dive into some questions about your reactions to finding out for the first time that you were going to become grandpas.
Okay, so Greg, again, my name is Frank Williams. I'm director of the White Plains Youth Bureau, and I have been at the Youth Bureau more than 30 years, and Jim and I are longtime friends. We go back many, many years, more than 30 years. I'm happy to be a part of Grandpas United and happy to see where this initiative is going, and it's just great to be a grandfather or grandpa.
One of the things that I love to do when I'm talking with grandfathers is to hear the story of the reaction that you had when you first found out that you were going to become a grandfather, because everybody takes this news differently and everybody has a little bit different reactions to it. And so, Jim, if you don't mind, share with us a little bit about when the news broke to you that you were going to become a grandpa.
Let's see. Well, my first, quote, grandson is Luca Isenberg, and my son Dan, when he told me, my wife and I were really excited. I would say Luca is terrific. I'll tell you, I had a funny experience with him. I went to negotiate buying a new car, and Luca, who's 12, he likes to be a negotiator. He likes if you say, I'll give you $5, he goes, Grandpa, if I do this, can I get 10 or what's? And we were in the negotiation with the car dealer. And when I asked the dealer if we could drive the car, I gave him my license. And he came back and he kept calling me. I'm so glad you're here. You're a great customer. And when I came back after looking at my license, he said, James, you're amazing. You're a great customer, James. And Luca turned to me and said, Grandpa, who's he talking to? Who's James? I said, I thought your name was Jimmy. I said, Well, actually, the formal name is James. He goes, "Oh my God, my middle name is James. I never knew I was named after you." So he had a moment, Luca James, and I think no one told him when he was born that who he was named after.
That's hilarious. That's a great story. Frank, how about you? What was the reaction that you had when you found out you were going to become a grandfather?
Well, certainly it was life changing for me. I certainly did not anticipate or expect that I was going to be a grandfather. I have two daughters, so when my oldest daughter became pregnant, it was just the best thing. And for me, it took me back to memories of my own father and grandfather. I had very close relationships with, and I just think the life of a grandfather is to enjoy and have fun and to play and not to be a disciplinarian, right? Because my daughter says to me, "Dad, you don't set any limits or boundaries," and I said, "No, that's not my job. Really, the job of a grandfather or grandpa is to build relationships with your grandchild and to build memories so that as they get old, they'll have these great memories of their grandparents." So that's what we do. My grandchild and I, all we do is pillow fight, right? That's what we do. I come home and we do. He gets a pillow and I get a pillow, and we fight. And he'll say to my wife and to my daughter, who do you love the most? Is it grandma or mom or me? Say, I love my grandpa because we have fun together.
Oh, that's awesome. And I appreciate you guys sharing those stories because everybody has different stories and reactions to finding out they're a grandfather for the first time. Some folks are like, boy, I thought I'd never get grandkids. And then other folks are like, wait, what are you doing? I'm way too young for this. So it's always great to hear stories from grandfathers about this really life-changing experience. What I'd love to do is, as we get into talking about Grandpas United, is I'd like to learn a little bit more about what prompted the formations of this group, because you were both working at different organizations that seemed like they may be involved in some of this type of activity, but maybe it wasn't something specifically related to grandfathers, meaning Frank, I know you worked with White Plains Youth Bureau, and Jim, you're working with the North American Family Institute.
Right. I think what happened is when Frank became a grandpa, and as he said, we're longtime friends. I'd been a grandpa. I started to look around on Google and see if there was anything for grandpas. And I couldn't, I'm sorry, Greg, I didn't know you then. I don't know about cool grandpa, but I said to Frank, grandpas, we could potentially make an impact on working with young people, but I can't find anything about grandpas. And there's, God love grandmas and their grandparents, but nothing specific to men, grandpas who have been able to give back. And Frank, we both have different contacts in the community, and we knew some other grandpas. And Frank said, "Why don't we think about, doing a grandpa organization?" And Frank?
Yeah, and I think, Greg, yeah, Jim and I, in addition to being friends, Jim is one of the founders of our 501c3 board, the Friends of the White Plains Youth Bureau. So Jim has a natural affinity for working with young people and being engaged with kids. And in our work, in my work, Jim's work, we know that there's so many children, especially males of color, growing up in homes without a father figure or male figure. So in light of the fact that we have this relationship after we became grandparents, we just said, why don't we start an initiative where we can engage retired grandfathers and men to give back to the community? Since both of us are very active in the community, we decided to do something with this newfound love that we have being grandparents by engaging grandfathers and men who are retiring from work to kind of stand in the gap to give back to children who not having a father or grandfather or a male figure. And so it became a natural kind of thing. And we started out with a small group of men, maybe 6, 7, or 8. And over time, it just grew in leaps and bounds.
And one of the things that happened, Greg, Frank and I knew a guy, Rich Leibson, who I'm sorry passed away, but he was a local news reporter for the local newspaper, and he interviewed us to talk about the Grandpa's idea, Grandpa's United, when we were first starting. And in the local newspaper, his story was on the front page, and the headline was Gramps, Not Grumps. And I think for both of us, I never heard Grandpa's described that way, but it was almost like a caricature of what people may have, he did. And he loved the idea, what people may be thinking of grandpas, that were just a bunch of grumpy old guys. So we began to think about that and think about how grandpas can be involved in the community and be involved working with young people in a way that was constructive. And it really caught on to a number of a very diverse group of grandpas, I must say, men with different backgrounds, different experiences, who wanted to give back and wanted to be involved and meet other men who were grandpas at this time in their life.
And Greg, I would say, we had no foundation to build on. We didn't have a model. So when that article came out, it did capture the attention of the community, and so much so that we started to receiving calls and inquiries from people far and near, and we started working with faith members, and before you know it, we had a bank of men who wanted to talk about their own experience being grandfathers and looking at how can we be helpful to you and in this community in terms of serving children.
What really struck a chord with me is similar to how I started this podcast and the project that I'm on, because I think very similar. I was looking around when I got the news that I was going to become a grandfather. Everything out there was grandfathers in sitcoms or movies. They're kind of villains, or they're the butt of the jokes. And in that context, it's all well and good, but that seems to be the only messaging that was really out there. And it was almost like grandpas weren't really needed so much. But when I talked with other friends of mine and they had a good relationship with a grandfather, they always talked about how meaningful that was and how that grandfather relationship really helped form some of their ideas and values and even drove them into different occupations because of that relationship they had. So I knew that there was something else out there. And I think what you guys are doing is really starting to wave the flag around a little bit so that the next grandpa that's searching for something is going to be able to come across your group and learn more about, hey, there are grandpas out there that are looking to make a difference and be active in the community and be active in their family. So this is, really great that we're all starting to find each other.
I was thinking today, Greg, Jim and I and others were part of the baby boomer generation. And of course, we grew up at a time when there was unrest in the nation. There was protests and demonstrations and civil unrest and all of that. I was thinking today, and I think a lot of the men who are part of us, these are men who recognize the importance of giving back and serving and being active in the community. So I think these baby boomers who are now grandpas now recognize that it's so important to give back, to serve, to contribute, and to help make a difference in our community.
Yeah, I think there are two. We started something called Coffee with Grandpas before the pandemic, which brought grandpas together about once a month in a different kind of discussion and had different speakers come, the police chief, the mayor. We did some things on health, which were interesting. Grandpas, 25, 30 grandpas. We had a session talking about dementia. And it was very interesting how many of them had someone in their family, and it gave them an opportunity to really talk about what had been going on for them and just how they were feeling about it. We did during the pandemic, some virtual tours. We had a tour of the Baseball Hall of Fame. We had a tour of the Negro Baseball Hall of Fame. we have had a wide variety and have continued the Coffee with Grandpas. So we also get linked in the community with everything from the library to the police department, and then a really good relations with the White Plains schools. And I think that gave us an opportunity. I think the other thing that happened is I had heard about, and you may have heard about, something called co-generated. It had been called Encore then. Mm-hmm. And Frank and I, we decided they were just starting the Innovation Fellows program. And we said, well, I said, why don't I apply, Frank? You know, you're a city government person. Maybe it's okay to have someone who's retired. And so I was selected in the first group of Innovation Fellows. And I think for us, it again opened up what the whole aging issue looks like nationally. And they were very generous. They gave, you know, the fellow got money that we gave to the grandpa. So all of a sudden we had some program kind of money, but it opened us up to the whole world that's going on out there or trying to, dealing with aging, where again, there was nothing really with grandpas. And that opened up a relationship with these others that wasn't about end of life stuff, but was about how we could be part of community service. And I think it opened us to Generations United. All of a sudden, we got some exposure and we learned some things about the term intergenerational, which is now more and more trying to be recognized around our country. And I think Grandpas United is clearly an intergenerational model. And that's been great for us.
When you started out Grandpas United, was the focus to be able to get in, assist in the schools? Was that the first, I don't know, initiative, let's say?
Yeah, I think one of the first programs that we got involved with, or a couple of programs, we started out some time ago, right before COVID, with this model called Dad Take Your Child to School Day. And it's a national program all over the country, the third Thursday in September, where all of these men and grandfathers are encouraged to bring their children to school. So we got on board of that, and we got some public attention by building principals and superintendents, and we identified some grandfathers. In fact, in White Plains, in all of the schools, there were close to 2,000 men bringing their children to school. So we got some public recognition for that effort, because one is that you generally don't find men coming to school. Essentially, when you look at PTAs, you know, it's mostly made up of mothers and women and that sort of thing. So that kind of gave us some attention. And then working with some of the school systems, we decided to do a program called Grandpa's Goes to School. So working with Church Street School, we identified with the principal some young boys who didn't have a father figure, a male figure, and we started to meet with these young boys, I think third, fourth, fifth grade, and just to build relationship and just to interact, just to have a male figure in their life. That program is going on right now as we speak. Jim will talk about our youth court program. We have a phenomenal youth court program, as you know. Sometimes young people make mistakes, and a lot of the mistakes is that because they just don't have direction or guidance. And Jim, talk a little bit about our youth court program.
So through the White Plains Youth Bureau, with Frank's leadership and a terrific woman who's been involved with Connie Hairston, a youth court was started to divert young people from the juvenile justice system. And it started during the pandemic. So the grandpas, again, started talking to the grandpas about the idea of doing this mentoring for young people in youth court to be part of their community service. And grandpas just were open to it. I mean, they were like, here's an opportunity to work with young people. Here's an opportunity to keep young people out of the juvenile justice system. And we've begun doing work with the youth court. And the youth court has young people who serve as the judges and prosecutors and so on. So even at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a series of Zoom calls with the youth court young people to get them used to what the grandpas might be able to do and what they were thinking. It was a very powerful experience within the pandemic for all of us. And then we began to have cases assigned to us. And I mean, I had two young guys who were open. I mean, the first young guy we had 10 to 12 different 1-hour sessions together by Zoom, talking about issues, talking about what's happening with them. I had another young guy who was interested in being a mechanic. I did a Zoom call with a guy I knew who was a mechanic to help him kind of guide him around what things he might think about as he moved through high school. So we've had a whole range of different grandpas involved. One terrific grandpa grew up in the Bronx, became an NYPD detective, has been outstanding as a grandpa, mentor for young people with youth court. And I think, Frank, we've kept more than 50 young people have been diverted from the system as a result of this mentoring. And one of the things that we've been able to do, we have two excellent staff people working with us, and one of them was a Fordham University clinician. And we now have, every 2 weeks, we have a mentoring training where we have 15 or 20 grandpas come together just to talk about mentoring and what kind of issues they come up with. And we've had different speakers, including a guy from the library talking to us about social media, who said the best way to connect with your mentee is text them. Don't try and call them and don't email them. It's texting is what makes sense. So it's been a very, very powerful program. And Frank, maybe you'll say one of the things that's come out of it, we've gotten tremendous support from our legislative and political leaders there who see the power of the grandpas being involved in the community. Maybe you might mention that.
Yeah, Greg, I want to say I was at a conference today, and Jim, I happened to run into the county exec, and he came up to me and said, oh, Frank, I don't have my grandpa hat with me. So he's a grandfather also, Greg. So, and he's a member of our grandpa, although he can't come to meetings. We tend to kind of keep him engaged with us. When we have a special program, he'll show up. And we just had we do an annual grandpa breakfast. He shows up and speaks. And we've had great support from Senator Andrea Cousins, Senator Shelley Mayer Tom Roach, and all of that. So we've gotten some recognition and attention. And I want to say one of the other important programs we got involved with through Jim is the YPI program. We talked about the youth court program, but the youth police initiative is an opportunity to build relationships between kids and police. And we just came out of the George Floyd and police reform work. And because we had a few resources in Jim's work with NAFI, we decided to bring the YPI program back to White Plains. And last year, we had this collaboration and partnership between kids of color and our police officers. And it turned out to be a great program, which essentially builds relationships and builds trust with our police officers. And the last thing, I know we do a lot, Greg, but I want Jim to talk about a new program that we're just getting off the ground called Jumpstart for Dad. So Jim, you want to weigh in on that?
I want to make sure one of us talks about the Community Service Awards too.
Yeah.
Because that's coming around. We've been fortunate. One of the really involved grandpas we have, Dr. Vito Sessa, is a retired pediatrician. And he's worked closely with Frank and the Fatherhood Conference and the Fatherhood Program and been very involved with the grandpas. And one of the things he and another grandpa partner who's a retired truck driver and a great mentor working with us have come up with a program called Jumpstart for Dads, which is going to focus on fathers, especially young fathers of color who are 25 and under and become in the process of becoming new fathers. This organization, Jumpstart for Dads, working with the White Plains Hospital and other organizations, will provide coaching and mentoring for new fathers. It's going to be bilingual, so it'll be able to engage the broadest group of fathers in our community. And they're really going to provide support. There's a whole curriculum really helping out new dads and giving them different skills and being able to communicate with them. You ask, what's it like to be a grandpa? I'd go back and say, what was it like to be a father? And what that moment was like. And probably a lot of us fathers, though we've had maybe fathers who were really helpful or grandfathers, many of us have not had that experience and not have someone really available. So I think this is one of the groundbreaking examples of what grandpas can be doing in a community to support young fathers. Right?
Yeah, and Greg, I wanted to say, out of all of this work, there's nothing like having an adult male figure in the life of a child. We're living in times where male figures, men figures, grandfathers, kids don't know that that's part of their lives. And to be able to let young people know that we care and to be present with them changes the trajectory for a lot of our kids. And we've gotten some wonderful letters from some of these kids who say that if it were not for this relationship, they don't know where they would be. The other program that Jim mentioned, we do a civic awards program each year because we think it's important to have community service. We give out 5 scholarships to young people who are engaged in service activities, community activities. And this is really a great opportunity for us to acknowledge young people who give back and to encourage them to serve their community. So each year in June, we give out $500 in scholarships for young people who have given back to the community. And it's exciting. We have the superintendent, the building principal, along with the children and their parents attending this function. And it's a way to acknowledge for these young people that their voices, their volunteerism matters. So it's one of the high points of the year for us as grandfathers.
I would say, Greg, on this Community Service Award, I think the backstory is interesting, hopefully to grandpas who might be open to joining or being a part of a Grandpas United. What had happened is, in the course of Frank and I just getting the organization started, I met a guy who was a grandpa who was in his 90s at a senior center memoir writing class. And this guy had been born in Britain, World War II, lived through it all, and then came to New York. And he became the head of the county electricians union. And we got to know each other, and he joined the grandpas. He was really helpful when we were looking at he did some sessions with young high school people around apprenticeships and supportive of that. And sadly, when he passed away, his family decided to donate some money in Saul Gibbons, the man's name, honor. And we said we'd like to start this Community Service Award and highlight it as community service, not academic scholarship, but supporting young people and acknowledging them who have done work in the community. And what the other part, which is exciting to watch, I mean, maybe you'll have a show, is 5 or 6 grandpas are on the awards committee. They interview the kids, they ask the questions, they're the ones who make the decision as a group which kids to give the awards to. And one of the other grandpas who, again, sadly passed away, but was a really big part of these awards, was a grandpa, Wayne Sobers, who had a lot of experience developing entrepreneurship in the Black community. He had written a book called The Harlem Line. He worked with the Black Enterprise Foundation, and he was amazing, just thinking and talking and asking questions and supporting young people around the community service. And so the dynamic of grandpas coming together to make decisions together and sharing their own experience as young people or as grandpas or fathers in giving back in the community is itself, to me, a very powerful moment of grandpas saying to young people, community service is really important, and acknowledging them in the community for the work they're doing. And that'll be happening. Tomorrow morning, the awards group is coming together to get ready for our third year doing the Community Service Award. And then, Greg, I don't know if you're a music guy.
Yes.
But before the pandemic, the Grandpas had a first Grandpa Talent Showcase. One of Frank's staff for years, Joe Mosley, has been a chorus director, and we put together a Grandpa chorus, and we have a great song, Grandpa's Got Rhythm, that was written for us. And we had about 100, 150 people come before the pandemic, and we do it in connection with this songwriter showcase at White Plains High School. And now that we're in 5 cities, we're going to have some other Grandpa and other guests come, but that show will be June 1st. So any of your listeners are invited to come to the talent showcase June 1st. Or if they're grandpas, if they want to show up and sing in the grandpa chorus, we'll make some material available for them. But it's going to be another really, really good show. I'm convinced. And we've got a really good partner with the schools, a guy, Dennis Polanco, who's the lead person on the Music and Songwriter Showcase. So I think part of the idea for the Grandpas United is there's a wide range of creativity going on. In different ways, grandpas can be involved in ways that are comfortable for them, but also sometimes might push them a little bit in a direction that they're learning might be interesting.
Jim, I want to say to Greg, at the onset, one of the other things we did, we produced a rap video. So we also have we have our own rap video. So as you see, we have been active and engaged, and it's exciting. With the community of grandpas is so creative and innovative. So a lot of good things are going on. Just think 5-6 years ago, this was not here. So you see where we are. We have programs in New Rochelle, Ossining, Port Chester, Peekskill, and here in White Plains. So I think we're doing something that has captured the attention of the state of New York, and I think it has potential to continue to grow.
Absolutely. A couple of comments in question. One is the rap video as good or better than the 85 Bears video?
It's the refrain is Gramps, not Grumps. We can and the guy who does the rap, and it was videoed by 2 of Frank's high school videographers. And this guy is a grandpa and a retired child welfare director for Westchester County. And he'll be singing it on June 1st. He'll be rapping, and he rapped it up before. The other, I'm wondering, Frank, of whether, Greg, we sent you any, we have a grandpa's, it's called the Word newsletter that we put out. And I think we've had 4 or 5 editions. We've got one coming, but you might want to comment on that, Frank.
Yeah, so we've assimilated stories and celebrations and events and human stories and experiences about our programs, but also it speaks to who some of our grandpas are and what they're doing, and some of the moments in the life of these programs. And we've done 4 of these newsletters, and Greg, and the next one, we're working on our 5th one right now. And I think once you read it, you'll see, wow, these guys are doing an awful lot. But it also speaks of the power of grandpas and mentoring and pouring back into the community. This organization is not something where people meet. And sometimes the images of grandpas is that they sit around at a park and they play chess, or they're not engaged. No, it's just the opposite. This is a group of men who are essentially part of the school community because they're in the school. They're part of the civic community because we're working with our legislators and our leaders. They're part of the fabric of our youth agency. So there's a lot of good things that are happening because these men are letting their talents and skills pour right back into the community, especially in the underserved community where young people have not had access to men in their lives.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this, and it's something that you guys are fulfilling, I think, without even necessarily knowing it, but I had a mental health expert on that was talking about men's mental health as we age. And one of the big challenges that we go through is the loss of our community and network. And meaning, you got buddies from work or the neighborhood that move away, they retire, they go somewhere, they move be closer to the grandkids, whatever the kinds of activities are, and it produces a real sense of loneliness and isolation. But the group that you guys are pulling together are probably grandfathers that don't necessarily know each other from the start, but then get in and they start building another set of friendships and another set of community that is focused outward on that service part, but then it also provides a real meaningful connection and serves that purpose as well.
I think that's a really important insight. I think that's one of the valuable outcomes I've seen happen with this. Frank's very much in the mix. He's running the youth bureau. I love he told me a story this week that his grandson, his little guy, said on a Saturday, "Grandpa, do you have another meeting today?" And Frank is, everyone is like totally plugged in with all the great stuff going on with the youth bureau. And I think one of the things that Frank has been so good about is being open to the grandpas, getting engaged in a whole range of, be it the fatherhood program or the youth bureau or with the schools. And for me, I'm one of those guys who was also very, very busy, but I've retired and I'm involved in some ways with some things, but I found it's been very exciting to meet this whole range of this group of men who some I might have known and many I wouldn't, and the different ideas. One of the things we did before the pandemic, Frank's from Mississippi and I did work with police all through the South, and we said we had a number of guys who had also grown up in the South and come to New York, and we had this fantastic down-home breakfast, a big community breakfast. And this one guy, Deacon Jackson, is a great cook. These guys made a breakfast for about 150 people in the community, and it was, there wasn't shrimp and grits, but there was grits, and they had all these fantastic, I forget the sausages they had grown up with, and people who came just went crazy with this thing. Oh God, this group of grandpas could make this whole down-home breakfast thing and be engaged, and everybody who was participating in this diverse group of men making this meal just had a great time. And I think it opened up something for them that they hadn't imagined.
Well, I want to pick up on what Greg said, and that is the whole perspective of grandfathers being engaged with each other. And we know that as men age, the issue of life expectancy becomes a concern or a thought. But having something to do, having fellowship with men of the same age and background, and it's kind of like a light, a rekindling of purpose and mission of giving back. We've had cookouts, we've had ice cream socials, we've had a couple of Halloween contests at Liberty Park in White Plains, in which the grandfathers would wear their Halloween costumes, and we'd have the best dressed costume. So we've been kind of creative and innovative and just being in the moment with some of these things that we do as a community. And I think what's nice about it is the innovation of activities and really just being open to meeting people where they are.
How have you guys been able to grow the organization? Because it sounded like it just started in one location as you started it, but now you're into 5 cities that are close by each other?
Yeah, I think the idea, we got a state grant from Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and then we got some funds thanks to County Executive George Latimer. And so I think Jim and I and others see the opportunity and potential of expanding this initiative because one, we know that the problem of for so many young people throughout the nation is the absence of men. And when we look at the justice system, we see that so many of these young men are in there because they just haven't had the kind of support. And I think for us, if we can move what we're doing in White Plains throughout the state of New York, it can be uh, uh, a really a opportunity, a pathway for children and youth and grandfathers. In fact, I was with the mayor of Portchester 2 weeks ago for their celebration of their grandpa program, and he's now a grandpa. So he's right on target in terms of being involved with the Portchester grandpa program. And I think the issue is that people are looking to make a difference. Men want to do something. If you've been a business person or if you've been in education or government, what do you do with you retired? What do you do with the next chapter of your life, right? And I think this kind of initiative gives people something to think about and say, maybe I'll mentor or maybe I'll go to school and give my time to a child. It opens up an opportunity for people to say, I'm still alive, I'm healthy, I want to give back.
I think one of the things that's been interesting, I assume a lot of towns have farmers markets, once a week. Frank and I, one of the things that what are different ways to recruit grandpas to be a part of an organization. And so grandpas, we go to the farmers markets and, it may be a little sensitive. You see somebody, it's a little walking by and you kind of go, hey, by the way, are you a grandpa? Or you know any grandpas it might be? And they'll go, yeah, I'm a grandpa. What? Hey, have you ever heard of grandpas? No, I never have. What? And then all of a sudden the grandpas are interacting with the grandpa or somebody, a young woman comes and says, I have a grandpa in my life. He's never heard of anything like this. How might we talk to him? Well, does he have a phone or an email? We'll be happy to give him a call or, send him an email. And I think people have responded. And it's been interesting in the 5 cities working with different groups of grandpas or guys who've come forward as grandpas to think about what are ways you might, recruit people.
Well, I can tell you that I interviewed somebody last week living over in Long Island, and this guy wants to get a chapter. I was telling him about this upcoming conversation we were having, and he's like, that sounds awesome. And I sent him some of your information and things. And he's like, oh, tell those guys they got a big fan over here in Long Island. We got to get one of these things up over here.
But I think if you have his contact, we're going to send you, Jim, I'm assuming you have Greg's email contact. We're going to we're going to send you the newsletters, and then maybe we can reach out to him and get something started in Long Island.
He has a fantastic relationship with his grandson, and he's just all about volunteering and helping out in the community and all that kind of stuff. And so he was excited. He wanted me to make sure that I told you guys you got a big fan over in Long Island.
Well, that'd be good. I would say, for other listeners to your podcast, I know you have lots of grandpas, lots of people out there. We're open to talking to people about in other cities how they might put a Grandpas United together, working with schools or doing things through religious affiliation or what it might be. One of the things that I've been looking at is I went to university out in Berkeley, and I've been a mentor to a first-generation college student, and said it might be helpful for, college alumni grandpas might be helpful to support new students at their colleges or at their schools. So I think there's a whole range of different ideas that we could be open to. And I think that we keep reminding, one of the nice things that happened with the grandpas, Generations United gave us an award as a program of distinction. And we're going to be going in the summer, I think it is, Frank, in July to their conference and have some kind of program panel with them to open it up. I think we find, the other thing is, I think there's a kind of sweet panache about Grandpa's United that people go, that I never thought of it that way. And I think for kids too, I had a funny moment. I went with one of my grandkids. He was in the kindergarten and they had a mystery reader. And I went as the mystery reader with a mask. There were like 25 little kids on the floor and they guessed who it was and so on. And at the end, I said, can I ask you a question? I said, how many of you have grandpas? And, many of the kids raised their hand. I do. And they said, what do you think of your grandpas? And they go, I love my grandpa. He's so sweet. I said, does anybody ever say or ever think that grandpas might be grumpy? And all of a sudden, 5 kids go, oh, yeah, my grandpa, if he doesn't take a nap, he's right. My grandpa. And I thought, this is great. This is real. This is the caricature. And I think that's why the grandpa link with the fatherhood program, the grandpa link with the Jumpstart for Dads, the grandpa link with the mentoring. There's everyone would say ultimately, I love my grandpa. My grandpa helped me in a way that no one else could. My grandpa's experience was interesting. And I think that's what happened with the mentoring. I think that's really, I had a kid in that first Church Street. I ran into him in the market one day. He was with his mother and he just smiled and he said to his mother, that's my friend. He's a grandpa. And you could just, it was one of those eye water moments with a kid. But I think there's a lot of that real feeling and real need for support that my hope is other grandpas around the country might be open to talking about having a Grandpas United and we can build relations, because I know all the grandpas involved with us are open to sharing and talking with people.
And we'll be sure to put links to the organization and some of the materials, the YouTube video that was going in about talking about the organization. We'll put that in the show notes. So if people are out driving around, walking, whatever it is, they can go to the show notes, find those links, and then be able to get in contact with you guys.
Great.
Greg, I wanted to say that a few weeks ago, we took a grandpa, we did an intergenerational program to the Jackie Robinson Museum down in New York City. So our grandpas chaperoned these middle school young people to the museum. And, of course, the grandpas were, excited, happy, Jackie Robinson, memories of sing and play. But the young people were just as excited as well. They had a great time of being it's a wonderful museum, but to be able to interact with these young people about our own experience during the time of Jackie Robinson and everything that he went through. And I think that's how you pass history on. You share your own stories about whether it is, the wars or growing up in the South or how we've gotten to where we are, so that children or young people learn firsthand how we got to be where we are today.
Oh, I love that. And that's one of the things I talk to folks about is that as a grandfather, a lot of us have basically 100 years of family knowledge and history, going back to maybe our fathers and grandfathers, that we can share with the grandchildren and we can share with the children that we work with, whether it's Scouts or Little League or wherever we're at. We've got all that knowledge from firsthand accounts from our grandfathers in many ways, of being able to say, hey, this is how that impacted us and this is how it impacted the family. So I love hearing about that multi-generational sharing of history and also what it means, because what Jackie Robinson and that experience meant for us is something completely different from people that grew up not realizing, not going through the experience of how monumental a situation that was, having Jackie Robinson suit up for the first time for the Brooklyn Dodgers.
So, we have so many things that we're doing and plans for the future. And I had a young man, I don't know if I told Jim, one of my colleagues in Mount Vernon said, we got to bring Grandpas United to Mount Vernon. And of course, we know that Mount Vernon has its challenges like all cities do. So there's another opportunity for us to bring this initiative to to a community that needs to have more men engaged with young people.
Frank and Jim, as we start to wrap this conversation up, is there anything about Grandpas United or anything about being a grandfather that you'd like to talk about that I haven't asked you yet?
Well, I think Jim has this passion, this drive that we're going to write a book. So that's what's on our radar. Our plan is to capture the stories, capture the essence, and put it on paper. So our hopes in the future is that we'll be able to tell the story of Grandpas United, how it got started, and what we're doing, and what our hopes are of the future.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea. And it's great that you can start that now that you're only, about 6 years out from when you guys really formally started it, so that you're not sitting around 20 years from now going, hey, what did we do again? And how did that work? And what,
I think the other thing is, my hope is that we've had some wonderful sessions with sports people that have really been exciting. My hope is we can find some people in the sports or the entertainment world that might be interested in providing some support to Grandpas United that can be used and can be shared with young people, just like the Community Service Awards, and ways that grandpas can provide helpful support in terms of young people. One of the areas we're looking to move in more is around support for young people in vocational skill development. We've been talking with the high school with that, and opening up, broader leadership areas. I think the example of the Jumpstart Fathers is a way of engaging intergenerationally. So I think there's some other ideas. I think the support we've gotten from our legislative leaders and county executive are examples of how certain kind of funding can support ways of moving into the community and support a whole range of, especially young men and young men of color, in ways that can really be helpful. So my hope is kind of looking out. We may connect with some grandpas who might be out there who have some ideas about that might be useful.
That's what I really hope too. And by having this conversation and having you two on, is that we do help to inspire grandfathers to, reinforce that grandfathers are needed, they are important, and to inspire folks to look to start an organization, get connected with Grandpas United, wherever they might be, and get this thing started, because I think it's been successful. And then it's also been something that I think would just attract some grandfathers that are looking to give back and really help the youth, because, it's easy for us to sit back and complain about, the world's going to hell in a handbasket and da-da-da-da-da. But it's like, okay, get out and do something. Don't just sit back and complain about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think this whole intergenerational idea is very, very sensible. And the other, just sometimes it's a lot of things with grandpas or older people is kind of more focused on end of life and what that's all about, which obviously is important. But there's obviously a whole range of things grandpas can be doing now that allow them to bring their experience. I just think of just this group of grandpas that we've been working with, this wide range of, and we're talking, 50 to 100 men. It isn't just a small group of people. And now it's happening in these other cities, and watching that there are men. It's not like we just found a few people we knew, but a diverse group of men coming forward and saying, I want to be a part of this. I want to, be involved and be a part of a world that can give back, but also I can share some of my experience and meet some other grandpas who can be my friends and can answer a question for me, or I can answer something for them, and we get to know each other. And I just say, finally, when we had a community breakfast and we give awards to some of the grandpas who've really contributed in the last year. And we had the first one in person that we had since the pandemic in December. And there were like 80, 90 people came, a lot of them, our legislative leaders and so on. And I think it really said to the grandpas, you're important. Senator Mayor came, the county executive, the mayor. These people respect you and want to acknowledge how important you are in the community. And I think that's relevant to every community because we know there are lots of grandpas out there who are ready and who are also may already be giving back, but, and are looking for this. But we want to say to people, we're open to helping create an organization in your community and be supportive of an organization you may already have. We think it's important. And thank you, Greg, for allowing us to meet with you and share our experience with your wonderful set of listeners, wherever they may be.
Oh, well, thank you. And I really appreciate having had this conversation with you guys. So once again, thank you for spending this time with us on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I've really appreciated it.
And we have hats. And we have shirts.
And we have shirts too. Yeah. So Greg, send us if we get your email, we're going to send you a cap and a shirt. So
right.
Yeah, we'll send that to you.
Oh, sounds awesome. I'll be sure to send that over to you.
And you can wear it wherever you want because it'll open a conversation. I guarantee you. It'll be fun. You'll get a lot of new listeners and a lot of people say, hey, I'd like to be on your show.
Well, anything I can do to support you guys, just let me know.
Well, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
I love talking with these two guys. Jim and Frank are a real inspiration to me about how grandfathers can really take this second phase of our lives, meaning once we've kind of finished raising our children, although we may not be completely done with that, and change over into pouring our expertise and our experience on teaching the younger generation on how to navigate this complex world. I also love the idea that they're getting involved in these youth courts and being able to help divert some of these young men that have made mistakes. I mean, hey, like Bobby Bowden said, there might be a broken window here or there that I might have known something about. Kids make mistakes. Young men make mistakes. But it's great that other men can come alongside them, help them guide through and make some better decisions that will affect them and their families long term. I absolutely love that. The other thing, too, that I am incredibly interested in following up on is the progress that they're going to make on mentoring new fathers. I think that's really important because sometimes if you don't have a father in your life and you're becoming that father, you don't have a real good role model to go off of, except for what's portrayed in media, which isn't always the best. So I hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and I really hope that you share it with friends and family that would enjoy hearing about Grandpas United. And if you're interested in starting a chapter of Grandpas United or just finding out more about the organization, be sure to check out the show notes as well as reach out to Jim and Frank. Those two guys are really open to responding back to inquiries and are there to really support other men. So until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.